Well, good evening, Chair Haas, School Board, Superintendent, and Assistant Superintendents. My name is Katie Schnider, and I am the current K-12 Dyslexia Specialist. Just to give you a quick little background, I am on my 19th year with District 742. I started here, I've been raised here, and I love being here. My background is I was a third grade teacher at first. Then I asked to be a middle school teacher, and I was a middle school teacher in 8th grade and 7th grade. I was able to have co-teaching experiences. I was also an academic coach for a year, and then most recently in the last few years is I asked to be a reading interventionist at North Junior High, and I had the opportunity to create that and provide that. And then all the doors opened from there, and now here I am. So thank you. The agenda for this evening is I will go over the Minnesota Dyslexia Statute, the district dyslexia screener process, elementary and secondary sound day update, professional development, 5-year implementation plan, considerations for next step, and just a review of our dyslexia website. This is a slide that I will read word for word due to the importance of what it says. Each school district must identify before the end of kindergarten, grade 1 and grade 2, to all students who are not reading at grade level. Students identified as not reading at grade level by the end of kindergarten, grade 1 and grade 2 must be screened in a locally determined manner for characteristics of dyslexia. Students in grade 3 or higher who demonstrate a reading difficulty to a classroom teacher must be screened in a locally determined manner for characteristics of dyslexia, unless a different reason for the reading difficulty has been identified. Last bullet, a student identified as being unable to read at grade level under this section must be provided with alternate instruction under this subdivision that is multisensory, systematic, sequential, cumulative, and explicit. Before I begin to really talk about the District 742 dyslexia screener process, I do also want to point out that I had the opportunity to present on the same update exactly 2 years ago, almost to the date, with Sue Kiernan. And so it is nice to be able to come back and give a full 5-year report. So with the screener, we have what we use as the STAR assessment, which is provided 3 times a year to all students. And we do use that to identify and help us identify students who may not be reading at grade level. From there, we do have, especially in the elementary grades, we have our ATSIS teachers, our K1, 2, 3 interventionists who do then go out and do further assessing to see if students do need extra support. Then also we have parents that ask for screeners, teachers, and staff referrals. In the time since I last presented, I do work closely with Shannon Avinson and the MTSS district teams, both at the elementary and secondary level. And we have developed a flow chart to really help guide the process of the screeners. And so we all have an understanding of what that looks like. And then most importantly, what do we do with the information, right? And so that is a process that we continue to work on. A special ed case manager may reach out, a dyslexia, then I speak about the flow chart. And then there's always that checklist as well. And one thing that has been added is now our checklist and our screener is an EduClimber. So everything is documented. Then that allows anyone who has access to EduClimber, it is in there. And the checklist can be sent to the teacher from EduClimber. And then we go out and I go out and do the screener. And then based on that information determines the intervention based on the need and the building resources. And just to draw attention to the picture that is on this slide, you'll see in a couple slides that I will also be speaking to core instruction. And this is a third grade classroom, and they are working on their core decoding and phonics. As I continue, typically one big shift, or there's some shifts that are happening through this whole process, is that a lot of times in the past for MTSS process is typically we ask for what can you do in 6 weeks, or what can you do in 12 weeks. And one of the pieces that we have been working on is really to understand that it will take more than 6 weeks to help a struggling reader or a reader with characteristics of dyslexia. And then the other key is because of that, what can we do to make sure that that child is able to continue that intervention at the right time, at the right moment the following year? And so that is the systems that we are putting in place to allow for that to happen, along with making sure like our fifth graders, if they started an intervention or supports in fifth grade, we are solid at the middle schools. And so those students were able to continue the intervention this year. And the same with transitioning from middle school to high school. So we really are putting in those key pieces to make sure that we can continue to provide until they are at or above grade level. Tonight, I will be speaking to these resources, and they have changed since the last time we presented. So the last time we presented is we do have Let's Play Learn. So that is being used currently as an intervention for kindergarten, first, second grade, and third grade. The next one, it's called Sunday System 1. That is K2 foundational skills, and that is an intervention being used for first, second, on up, depending on where students fall. Sunday 2 is a system then that is used, and sometimes know that older students can fall into Sunday System 2 without Sunday System 1. But typically, if a student begins in Sunday System 1 in an intervention, they should be able to finish all the way through Sunday System 2. And that is determined based on their mastery, based on each English language rule that is taught. And then if you look at the purple resources, that is where a lot has been added. And so when we last reported in 2020, we were just implemented Essentials 1. So when you hear Essentials, we're speaking to the core, to all students. So currently, it is all our first graders in District 742 and all of our second graders in District 742 are receiving Essentials 1 and Essentials 2 in the classroom. And then the Let's Play Learn Sunday 1 and Sunday 2, those go hand in hand with that core curriculum to support the students who may just need that extra dose. Here's really what has happened in the last 5 years. So in 2018 is when Sue Kiernan came on, and she started to really kind of research like what resources could we use, and then we started a pilot the fall of 2019. I was one of those pilot teachers. So if you look, 141 students were part of the pilot, and then 11 teachers were part of the pilot. From there, in 2019, 2020, that is then when we added more teachers using those resources. We decided to move forward with those intervention pieces, and then also pilot some Essentials, E1, so to see kind of how that core piece would work. That then in 2020, 21, then that was when all first grade teachers were trained during that hybrid year, and they implemented E1 the best they could, right? Hybrid year. And 96 teachers were part of that. Also then, in 2021, so that'd be last fall, and that would have been my first full-time year as the dyslexia specialist. And so at this point, we had 108 teachers. We just had more additional teachers, more additional intervention, and then we also had some E2 teachers pilot. And then from there, we moved on. And so this year, I go out and we support, I support 154 teachers who are using all of these resources. And right now, 2,947 students are benefiting from that explicit instruction, whether it's core classroom or within the intervention. And that is in elementary, middle school, and high school. I do want to refer back to this page because a lot also has happened with these growing numbers. And I also just want to take some time to know that we were asked to speak to the Secondary Principal Association Summer Conference. And so Sue, Joe Heitkamp, and myself to go and do that presentation on the implementation of dyslexia. I also, just through some of the trainings and all the things that I have been involved with, I have spoke to many principals and members who ask for our phone number, and I get to share these stories of how we grew around dyslexia and supporting students with characteristics of dyslexia. Also know that recently, actually we have Sauk Rapids teachers coming and observing some of our teachers this week. And then Cold Spring, Ricori School teachers, elementary teachers have reached out, and we'll be scheduling that time for they now want to come and watch what is happening in our schools, along with phone calls from Park Rapids School Board. And then just recently, I was in touch with someone from the International Dyslexia Institute of like the surroundings, so like Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota. And I recently have been asked to speak at the spring conference. I have not said yes yet, but I think that's important to know that they are reaching out and wanting to know more. Well, it's the International Dyslexia Association, which is the big name, and then they have smaller groups that are formed within the states. So it's IDA, and they have like this big, huge conference, but then states come together and put together their mini dyslexia conferences. And so it was that one. I was not invited to, I think it's in San Antonio. I was not invited to that one. Not yet, yes, I like that. All right, here we go. So now some data. As I share this, one thing to just consider is really the documentation of just even keeping track of students who have been in this intervention. EduClimber was new. It was a hybrid year, so really we've been able to document well as of like last year, and now we are continuing to work with that system, and I'll talk about that later as well. But the data, so right now, when I was able to go into EduClimber, I was able to pull and identify that last year, 449 of our students, first grade, possibly through high school, received Sunday 1 intervention for 1 year. Of those 449 students, 381 students took the Fall Star. Now, if you're a first grader, you don't take the Fall Star, you take the early lit. So that's why the numbers may be off. And then also know that in high school, after a certain grade, they no longer take it either. So of those students, and we can assume, because we would not put a student in a tiered intervention like this if they were at the does not meet. So more than likely, 449 students were at the does not meet. And this fall, we are able to say that 52 students partially met the STAR, 26 met, and 7 exceeded with 1 year. And we know that it can take multiple years. This is an example of a first grade teacher. She was part of that first grade hybrid year of implementing E1 in the core classroom. And then in second grade, she looped with her students, and she did E2 with her students. And so this would be the STAR data from their second grade year. So they had all of E1 in a hybrid year. And then at the beginning of second grade, 12 were in the does not meet. 3, and the colors are a little off for me, so I have to look at my notes. 3 were in the exceeds, and 3 were met, and 1 was does not meet. Fast forward to their spring, because now at this point, they've had lots of E2. And they were 7 students that met, 4 that exceeded, 4 that partially met, and still 1 with the partially met. Or does not meet, sorry. There was 4 that does not meet, where in the fall there was 12. The next piece of data is this is a group, same type of situation, but this is a group of first graders. They're now our third graders. So their first grade year, all the first grade teachers gave them E1. Their second grade year, they all got E2. And then in second grade in the fall, 50 did not meet, 17 partially met, 20 met, and 3 exceeded. Now they had all of E2, so they've had E1 and E2. 28 did not meet, 7 partially met, 38 met, and 17 exceeded. And that is just within the core. We can assume that more than likely some of these students also received that tier 3, which could be a Let's Play Learner or Sunday 1. Now I'm going to speak to the elementary curriculum and kind of how we have grown since our last presentation. And so currently we do have some Essentials K. So again, that's core. Essentials 1, all. Essentials 2, all. We have some E3, we have some E4. Let's Play Learn and Sunday 1 are solid across the board in all the schools. So again, the top is all students in those schools, and at the bottom is intervention. This just shows you this change of elementary teachers. So in 2020, we went from 43 to 90 gen ed teachers, 21 sped teachers to 13, 8 APSIS to 10.5, 4 EL, and now currently in the elementary EL is not using it, but that's really because we are servicing all students. And then the interventionist. So it says 13.5. We have academic leads, and so in some schools, the academic leads are playing as, or I shouldn't say playing, they are the interventionists. They've been trained and they are working with students. So lots of great things happening to make sure students are getting what they need. I just want to take time to share some stories because I know we all appreciate the stories and we want to know what the teachers are saying and what the students are saying. And so I want to make sure I honor those stories. So I have to look at my list. One thing about the best thing about this job is I get to go work with kids still. I get to be with kids every day and teachers every single day. And so part of the training is that I train you, but then I also come in and I'd love to model and teach it and hang out and talk about it. And then I can come back and watch you and talk about it. And so I get to walk in and teach. Sometimes it's kindergarten, sometimes it's 10th graders, sometimes it's middle school. And I will say that the elementary students, when I ask them what they love about Essentials, is they're like, we can learn how to read. They really, truly know and believe that this is going to help them. They call themselves, so they do still like to call themselves Sunday, even though it's core, right? But they call themselves Sunday superstars. We kiss our brains a lot. When I come into the classroom, especially if it's a second time or a third time, they're like, oh, they cannot wait to show me their mastery checks, and they can't wait to show me the improvement that they are learning. And the teachers, I know for a lot of first-year teachers, they just greatly appreciate the training, the support, knowing that they know that they are teaching kids how to read with that explicit instruction. And also just knowing what does EK need to know all the way through E5. It's great resource for teachers. And then at the intervention level, many interventionists will tell you that never before have they had so many kindergartners be able to, or their first graders, I should say, really be able to identify their letters and naming their letters and writing the alphabet. And when we really learn about how the brain is wired to read, that is one of the most powerful steps. The other thing that I have noticed just around dyslexia in general is the conversation about it. We talk about it, and we talk about accommodations, and we talk about what do students need. Some students have a diagnosis, some we say characteristics of dyslexia, but ultimately, when we are talking about reading, the brain needs to be wired to read, and there's lots of great things coming out that what works for the dyslexic brain really works for all the brains. And I think that's just what has been so much fun in this job is the new learning that's happening. We're just one step ahead, and it's just phenomenal, and it's exciting to see that link and knowing that we are making the changes that we need to make for our students. Oh, there's my Sunday superstars. Secondary curriculum. So in December, in 2020, we had interventionists, special education, EL Reading Foundations 3, Riverwoods at the time, and now currently, and last time we presented, we also asked for the science of reading to be approved for the high school. And so we are on the second year of that intervention. And we have now turned all the middle school. So Kennedy has one period of a science of reading, which is what we would consider a tier 3 intervention for our students in the middle school level. At North and South, we now have full-time science of reading intervention teachers. And then at the high school, we have one teacher who then is 0.5 at Tech and 0.5 at Apollo. Catherine Johnson, we have teachers using Sunday 1 and Sunday 2 there. And then the EL Reading Foundations 3 class and special ed. One big movement that I have noticed as I went out, and I read with students all the time, and I read with many in the spring. And one exciting piece that I finally got to experience after a couple of years of doing this is that I did not find many of our gen ed students needing Sunday 1 after 8th grade, where before we did offer Sunday 1. And so right now, in the gen ed science of reading course, none of the students fall into that Sunday 1. So they're in the Sunday 2, and those students are helping us guide that instruction. They know what they need. That's the best thing about talking to the kids. They know what they need, and they tell us. So at the high school, this is, in 2020, we didn't have anything, and now we do. So we have 6 teachers at the high school level between the Reading Foundation, Science of Reading, and SPED. And now I want to talk about secondary. And some of these stories are quite powerful because as we do get older, they know their brains. And so I also have been working with the counselors at the secondary level, big time. Students are reaching out and advocating for themselves and will say, I have dyslexia and I need help with this. And so I've been going and working with students, and just the other week, a young man, he's 10th grade, he has figured things out, right? Like that's the amazing part of the brain is they figure it out, but they still know their challenges. So the challenge was this, LA, language arts, he can read it, thinks he can understand it sometimes, but he just doesn't like the fact that his friend next door finishes it way quicker than he does. So he's like, what could I do? So I opened up StudySync and I showed him all the little tips and tricks. And I showed him how to play it reading to him, but he wants to read on his own because he knows he can. So I said, well, just turn off your volume, but then use the highlighter and hit slow. And then he was like, I can follow along and I can do the reading. And he literally shut his laptop and he's like, that's all I needed, thank you. And then he's like, but if I have more questions, can I just tell my teacher that I need to talk to you? And I was like, yep, absolutely. You just let me know. So the fun part is that the students, I mean, we're just talking about it. I have a teacher at South, he said that one of the best things about this is they talk about it and then they start sharing their brains and why their brain works this way. And whether you have characteristics or you have struggles or you do have a diagnosis, we're all in the same boat. But the good news is we can learn and we can learn how to read. We're just not there yet, but we're in the right place. Another unique story is as I went out and read with 8th grade students, we had a student who moved here mid-8th grade last year. So I was at South and reading with all the kids. And I looked at her because I could tell there was struggles. It only takes a few seconds, really, to figure out if someone needs some support. And I looked at her and I said, hey, just out of curiosity, tell me about how you are as a reader. And she goes, oh, well. And I'm like, well, would you like some support in reading? And she goes, yeah. And I said, well, okay, well, at Tech, we have this class. And I started talking about the class. And she goes, oh, I am so glad I moved here. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad you moved here too. And she goes, I have been waiting forever for a teacher to realize I can't read. So, yay, not going to cry tonight. So then I did that cabinet, got it all out there. And so, and now she's in this class, and I get to go and teach that class because I also teach for all the secondary teachers so they can attend MTSS, which is really the process of making sure that the interventions are working, or if we have new students to continue that flow and support. And another awesome story is I talked about my 6th graders in 2020 who are now 8th graders. And I just reached out to their awesome new reading intervention teacher at North, but they're still my babies. And I went to go visit them, and they are almost done with Sunday too. And they are meeting their mastery checks at 100%. And they still could probably use something else, so we do still have some work to do. But overall, and she got to be in it in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And now, more than likely, she shouldn't have to be in anything in high school. That's just powerful. Oh, these are the high school students. And all they wanted to know is if I was going to become famous, because I told them I was going to speak to the board. I tell the kids that all the time, and what do you want me to tell them? And then why did this just not happen when I was younger, right? So they understand that. And then they're happy to hear that it is happening in the elementary school. So they wanted to say thank you. Speaking to the brain, we are learning about the brain, so we also want the kids to learn about the brain. And Kelly Marcourt is the high school science of reading teacher. And she was like, okay, Katie, I want to make sure that they know why are they here, right? Why is this happening and what's working? And so she has created these awesome slides to get students to understand. And we've shared this with the other high school teachers, and I know even at the elementary, we now talk about how our brains wire. All right, those were all the fun stories. I have so many more, but you can always ask me to go out for coffee. I will share them all. So the legal requirements really is that all students take universal screener, and that is what we are doing. We also are identifying all students not reading at grade level. I would say that, yes, we are doing that. That I will say over again that the documentation process, that is what we are working on now that we're all in, now that we have EduClimber, now that we have our teams. I work closely with Jamie Conway and making sure that we are able to have all that documentation. We are providing the alternate instruction that students need. Learning and Teaching does then do the report to the Commissioner of Education by July 1st of a summary of our screeners. Oops, sorry. And then, the professional development. That was one of the first things I did tackle last year is I offered, and every single licensed staff member, K-12, I guess if they were present, right, they did get a full hour of understanding dyslexia, and most importantly, the accommodations that we can provide as educators. And then most importantly, that those accommodations are just great for the brain and how the brain works. So, oh, I don't know why that had to, sorry. So this is a summary. There's a lot more, but I've already spoken to every single year and where we started and where we are and the work that we are doing. And this is just a nice little visual that provides you with a summary. But now we have next steps. And so with that, just with the work that I do, again, the K-12 being in all the buildings with all the kids and all the teachers, I do think that a universal screener review, like just really how can we be more efficient maybe in that screener process and the dyslexia screener process to make sure that kids are getting what they need and to see if they have the foundational skills. And that's really a lot of the learning that we are having, that if you don't have the foundational skills, you have to have those. And then really training for all staff on recent literacy research, and most importantly, this is big. It's really big out there right now with the new research around all of this and the science of reading. And so not only do we have to train and allow for that learning, but supports have to be in place for teachers. Like they need the extra support. They need, in my dream world, reading coaches, more of a dyslexia specialist. And then we have some intervention in 4th and 5th grade, but that is definitely something we need to focus on because, again, going back to it takes more than 6 weeks and it can take more than a year. So if we have students who are being successful in 3rd grade, but there is no 4th and 5th grade intervention, then they cannot continue. And then just continuing to guide the guidance on meeting the legislature. Then we do have the website. Many times, lots of phone calls, even just from parents, I direct them to the website, and there's helpful information on there. So even as community members, or if you hear of anything, just please always direct them to the website, and that is a great place to stop. And the best way to get there is you search dyslexia, and it'll pop up. Questions?
Scott?
I would like to say thank you to former board member Jerry Von
Yes.
Korf. He was the leader. He was the man that pushed this way before other schools did. He put us at the head of the pack as the laws came in.
Yes.
Thank you, Jerry. You did a terrific job getting this going.
Yes, thank you.
Of course, but you're the board member behind it. Yes.
Mhm.
And you are closing the largest achievement gap in St. Cloud and in Minnesota. You're closing that gap. It's race-free. It's closing the gap whether people are white or black or whatever. And you can do this in math, and you can do this in other areas. You need a great superintendent, you need a great team, and then you need the will to run research to make it happen.
You were the guy that recognized it, and you were the man that pushed it. They all do, dear. I was listening to National Public Radio the other day, and they've just completed a series on reading. You might want to look at it. But one of the things they said is that most kids don't read like they should, and that this stuff for special ed reading this Sunday, it's starting to be spread into the rest of the school population. Are you in? Do you have the resources to do that?
So speaking of that, so that again goes all around the science of reading, and I will throw out some things out there, but bear with me, I don't have the notes. So, but even tonight, I was providing some professional development for teachers this afternoon. Currently, only 36% of fourth graders right now in the United States read at grade level. Okay, so one, big, right? Two, the brain is not naturally meant to read. It is only naturally meant to communicate and to listen. And so now we study the brain, and there is training out there right now around the science of reading and all the things that you just spoke of how most children learn how to read. And I am in that knee-deep, intense training right now. I started last January. And it is just mind-blowing learning that really, if I look back as a third grade teacher, the reason why I jumped ship to middle school is because I knew deep down I did not know how to teach my third graders how to read. And I knew that there was something magical was going to happen by the time they got to me up north, even though they were the same kids. But yet, those kids came to me as 7th and 8th grade, and then I asked to be a reading interventionist because I was like, oh, wait, they're still not reading. And even then, we still did not know the answer. So like I was saying to like community members and friends and parents, because everyone hears me talk about this, I do speak to Jerry about like, wow, there's this guy about dyslexia, and then boom. And then now all this new research is coming out, and it's just unfolding, and it is just, we are in a wonderful place to really make those improvements, but I would say we do still need a lot that to continue that big picture. And it's the learning.
What are the resources that we can provide for you? What do you need to spread it to the whole schools?
So one of the things that we do need is the learning behind science of reading. And I do believe that we do need that K-12. However, that can look differently, right, for each grade level, because the training that I am taking is intense. So again, if the teachers get that, we need to make sure that the support is there. And I will keep speaking to that because, right, our teachers are the ones that are going to be the game changers, and just making sure that they have the supports. And so you would definitely need more people to support them. You know, right now I go to all 13 buildings I'm in one full day a month, and do my best supporting them with the learning, and they want to know and they want to learn, but that takes a lot of time. And then from there, we do need more intervention, and especially 4th and 5th grade. And I would say though, resources-wise, I feel quite confident with the resources that we have. Right now, it's learning. Right, I could give anyone a resource, but if you don't have that knowledge of how that brain works and how to integrate our core curriculum with understanding that, you know, and then there's the phases of the reading and how do we move our students by understanding what phase they're in. There's a lot to that. And so that's where the support, I would say, is needed, is the learning
Okay.
and the support.
I know that no one taught me phonics until I was in 12th grade.
Right.
It's like just in time for college, actually. So it's nice to see that we finally have something that works, because people have been looking for years. What works? How do
Right.
we reach these kids? And I'm glad we've got something
Oh,
finally.
me too. We have the answers.
It-
Thank you.
Monica?
This is so exciting. I want to know the story.
What story? Did I say there was a story?
Yeah, you said that you have many of them.
Oh, I have many of them. Yes, you just call me and we'll hang out. I really should write a book.
Okay,
Yes.
good. I have a question that I have every time that you do this presentation, and I think that I asked it before and you didn't know the answer. Wonder if you have found out. And it is about how dyslexia works. So if dyslexia works different, if your native language is different than English, and how does it work for bilingual students?
I appreciate that conversation. So that is something even I personally, with the research, is still trying to figure out. So from what I'm personally learning, but I cannot speak right, because sometimes we all take things differently based on what we're learning, is that I do feel that the brain is the brain. And I was just speaking to, and I was at Clearview this afternoon providing some PD around reading. And then I took it upon myself because I even realized like the Spanish immersion, I'm like, wait, I have to do a little more digging about, because I want to respect the Spanish immersion teachers to make sure that like if I speak to English reading, is that really going to help support what we do there? And so what I found out was that if you're literate in your first language, right? Then then you are more than likely to be literate in your second language, whatever that may be. I'm also learning that, but if you're not literate in your first language, then typically the brain is wired to read is the same in any English language. And when it came to Spanish, so learning how to read Spanish, it also went through the same phases of reading, but identifying that some things were different, because what's nice about like Spanish is, yes, but you can read it accurately, but our students may not know what they're reading. But with English, but most importantly, in English, you aren't even able to comprehend unless you can be accurate and fluent, because the brain won't wire. It has to have that fluent, it has to be fluent for it to be really to remember what it read. Did I answer your question? So I'm still researching that a little bit, because I truly believe that yes, any brain can read English with explicit instruction. But that is my takeaway from my own personal learning.
Thank you. So a follow-up of that question. The one thing that I always hear about reading about dyslexia that you just touched on it is that it's important, and people are talking about English, that kids sound the letters, right? And because Spanish is phonetic.
Right.
So I wonder about, why do they need to sound the letters, and what is the difference with the Spanish?
Because if you learn the English language rules and you learn like the blend, so a blend is two letters put together at the beginning of the word, and sometimes there's blends at the end, so you can actually sound that out. Then, and remember, I'm still learning. This is all new, so bear with me. So we can hang out. We can get out the textbook. But really, if you learn the English language rules, and you understand how, like the AI, like when you make the long vowel sound, and you understand that sometimes there's one letter that make a sound, then there's two letters put together that make a sound. Those are called digraphs. And then eventually we teach those English language rules. And if you know those rules, it does support 85%, if not a few more, they're learning to be able to break apart the word and be able to read it.
Wow, I want
Yes.
those rules.
Well, I have them. And we've talked about that. Like, I have adult education, like, I'm like, wow, if you're 90 and you don't know how to read yet, we can teach you how to read. Like, it's out there. It can happen.
Cool. So I want to support Jerry's suggestion about doing this with math.
I have not studied math yet.
No, you keep doing what
Okay.
you're doing. But just a comment for Lori. Let's just go into the math, and I'm still missing this math person that we had. I don't know, a couple of years ago. What happened with her? What is Lori? introductory push. She knows what I'm talking about. The person that was talking, that was teaching about teaching how to teach math. And we still have that?
Yeah, we do. Are you thinking about our math specialist? Like our,
Yeah.
Yep. She, the one who came and did math. Yep. She's still with us, and we do have the CRA, the math that's going, and we are rolling out a new math curriculum next fall. So we are continuing, not doing new things, but we're continuing that concrete R abstract representational. Thank you. Right, that transition we're breaking down, right? Like the transition from kind of some of those rules, right?
Very
and
similar.
how your brain moves through those stages of understanding for math. So we are doing some of those things. Certainly, we've got work yet to do, as we know, but we are working.
And then we're going to intersect all of that with arts.
Yeah. There we go.
Yes.
They all go hand in hand. They all help the brain.
Yes. So one last question. I'm really curious about what people wants to know when you go to those conferences and when people contact you from other schools and stuff. Like, just want to tell us one or two things about people.
Oh, what they want to know.
What they want to know. What they ask us.
Yeah, I think the key thing is how do we speak to dyslexia is one big question I have, and how do we implement the screener? That is another question, and then most importantly, like, what do you do with that information with the screener if you don't diagnose, and how do you speak to that? And so the bottom line, even when I speak to parents, is this is what I can tell you, this is what we know, and this is how we can support your child. And those are kind of the phrases that I use. And then many also want to know just how did you start that intervention and what resources are you using? Why did you choose to go with that resource and not another one? And then I think many people have been also curious about the position, like a dyslexia specialist. And I do speak to board members who, have made that happen. You're welcome.
I don't know you, but I bet you're one of those people who like are the same no matter where you go. Like with a third grader and an eighth grader and a 90-year-old, your heart is just like so obvious for students, and I'm just really thankful that you've been here with us.
Yeah.
I don't know where the lines are on your face for 19 years, but like, wow, amazing. What's your skincare? Let's go to coffee. I was like, when I was going through this a couple days ago before when we got the slides, and I got to that place where it's like 144 students 4 years ago, and then 2947, I'm like, that's fake news. Like, that's a lie, because it's just so shocking to understand what the depth of what we were missing when we didn't have this resource. And so it's really exciting. So when you said you weren't going to get choked up, that eighth grade student that you talked about, it reminded me of this person in our community who was really angry about test scores, and they were just like, why haven't you done anything? And they were yelling, and and it was debilitating, just like, what do you even say to that? But it's like, she's not a test score,
Right.
She is a human being who's had a life that she's lived before she came here, and now she's like, okay, now I can get this help. And so it really is helpful to hear those stories and to really be able to understand. I mean, of course, every child, all of our 10,000 students have lived a life before they come to us and as they're with us. But it's so personal. The interventions are so personal, and I think that really goes along with our mission. So I'm thankful for you, and we should clone you.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I am thankful for the opportunity and the students. I mean, they are just, they're great. And when you ask them, they will tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, they are just very honest with their learning and how they learn and what they want and need.
I used to teach middle school, and you don't have to make stuff up. You just ask, and they're like, "This is what I need for you to do." I'm like,
Yes.
Great, let's do it.
I had one high schooler at a point, he's like, you mean kids turn this down?
Right.
And it's like, well, sometimes we're all at different levels of understanding what we need.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't understand. Why would you turn down learning how to read? I'm like, well, I know. That's, I get it.
Thank you. I
You're
appreciated
welcome.
hearing from you today.
Yes. No, thank you.
I lost you on one of the slides where you're talking about that it takes about 2 to 5 years to get through all the levels of the program. But then you were also in the same line talking about 6 to 12 weeks of intervention, or,
Got it. Yep, I can clarify that.
thank you.
No problem. So typically in the past, so just like prior to what I know now, right? In the world of education, when we see a student who is struggling, we would say, okay, we're going to narrow in on this, whatever this may be, and we're going to do it for 6 weeks to 12 weeks with what's called progress monitoring. So I'm going to do this instruction because I think this is what they need. And then I'm going to see if it's working and report. And if it's not, then typically in a situation like that, maybe we would try another intervention, or maybe we would try another intervention. And then typically what's most important is that if something truly is not working, then that is when you want to make sure you provide the opportunity for possibly an assessment to dig a little deeper. Well, now that we know what we know, when a student comes through MTSS and we provide a Tier 3 intervention and it is working, it will not, you can't learn to read in 6 to 12 weeks. So that's the big change.
Thank you.
Yep. And so we do have a lot of things in place of just that communication between the interventionist, the MTSS team, the teacher, to make sure that the intervention is working and that we have evidence to support that. And if it's not, then what do we do? But to allow for time, it takes time.
So then if it is working, then
We allow
we're
it to-
committed to
yep.
them for that
Yes.
pathway.
Just like the 6th grade student that
Right.
she's
Yeah,
now
okay.
coming, and it will be 3 full years.
Thank you for that
welcome.
explanation. That makes sense. Dr. Green?
Fantastic, first of all.
Thank you.
Do we have information about the motivation for these students to read? It sounded somewhat, in one of the things you said about competition, they get done sooner than me.
Oh, that was that.
Well, let me
oh,
just
yep.
finish that, because you may not even want to answer the question. But the other thing is that you said the brain's not wired to read. So why would we? The question is, what is the motivation for kids to learn to read? That I mean, is there something in the book, in the letters, in the thing that they want out of it, that says they should read? Or is it? I mean, I noticed one of the slides, it said everyone has a right to learn to read.
Yeah.
I turned that to responsibility. And I mean, it seems to me people need to be able to read, but there seemed to be, and the 8th grader, how do you get to 8th grade without being able to read? Because I understand that when it comes to slam dunk and basketballs, you don't need to read to do that. And we had people at Michigan State who could slam dunk a basketball and couldn't read. There was a reason for that, but how do these kids get to 8th grade? They must have some coping skills.
Well, I'm glad you asked that.
So there's a lot of stuff in there. It just
No,
my brain went that
So
way.
I'm going to start with that. So a lot of the, as I work with all the students, typically after I do a screener and we hang out, because I love to get to know our students, I start with, tell me where did you go to kindergarten? Tell me where you went to 1st grade. Tell me where you went to 2nd grade. And just those first 3 questions tell me a lot. So many of our students transient. They go to multiple elementary schools. There's some, and then of course we have students who may not start school till a little later. And then we have students where they really share their stories, and that's when the tears flow, their reality, their life. and they share their struggles. And so there's a lot of things that come into place. And then most importantly, is I can tell you that as an elementary teacher, no one ever taught me as a teacher how to teach kids how to read. I was 38 years old when I just started this work a few years ago, that I actually knew that X made the X sound as a teacher. So I think that's key. And then the motivation piece with the competition. It wasn't so much competition between the reading. He's a 10th grade student with really great grades, and he wants a social life. And he's telling me that when he goes home, and he has a diagnosis of dyslexia, and he's just said, "Oh, I can do it, I get good grades, but this is taking me a really long time. Do you have accommodations and tools and tricks to help me so I don't have to go back and reread over and over again?" And the motivation is there. When you go out and you ask them, they are excited to tell you that they can finally spell a word, that they're reading sentences, and they're reading words, and they want to read.
Why?
Because they know deep down that their life will be easier in school and everything else if they can read. You're welcome.
Anybody else? Otherwise, I want to open it up to our honorary, if they would like to ask a question, make a comment. Love to hear from you.
My law firm incorporated Decoding Dyslexia, the corporation, and so we have some contacts there, and people have heard about District 742. And there has been tremendous resistance to this in many districts. And we could talk about why that is. And if you look at the Sold a Story, they'll tell you, that radio show tells you why that is, and the colleges have been contributing to this problem. There's a group of parents in St. Paul, there's a group of parents in Minneapolis, there's a Facebook group that's where parents come together and say, where can I find a district that meets the needs of my kids? Because all over the state of Minnesota, people with means are paying private, that's part of what we were trying to do early on when we were working together, was to put my wife out of business. Her business feeds off of people that school districts aren't taking care of. But throughout the metro area, there are places you can go into districts where people post signs saying, I can teach your kid to read. And so parents they get angry because first they're told their kids are doing okay, and then they're told their kids are struggling, but they're going to be okay. And then somewhere along the line, they learn that their kids is not, and they're so angry. Why isn't my school district helping me? And so now there's a group of parents that are communicating with each other, and they're saying, who knows how to do this? And one of the answers is the St. Cloud district. There's still lots of people in this area who are paying private tutors who can afford to do that, and then that's part of the achievement gap. And so, at any rate, I have a Facebook group that's very interested in what we're doing, and I gave them a link to this board meeting and told them I don't know if there's anybody on, but I know that they are very much interested in what they're doing, because when they go to their school board, this is what happens. The school board says, oh, no, that's not, we don't need to do that. They have no idea, or if they're doing it, they're sending people to a couple hour training sessions. But what you are doing, and this is so important, is you have this, you've gone about this systemically. You didn't, the superintendent didn't come in and say, okay, tomorrow we're gonna do dyslexia, right? And then everybody goes to one day of thing and somebody gives them a speech and then they have to do it. What you did, and you can do this with math and you can do this with all sorts of things, might take some more resources to do it. But what your leadership did is they said, we're gonna spend some time figuring out who knows how to do this, and they brought in some people, and then they did a little bit of testing, and then they picked the Sandi system. I wouldn't have picked the Sandi system, but I was wrong. They picked the Sandi system, and they liked it, and they believed in it. Then they started training, every year more people. And this is why this is working and what lots of other people aren't doing, because they don't go about it systematically with a 5-year plan, and you have put a lot of resources in this. How much have you actually put in this? I'll bet you put $1 million worth of time so far into this if you put a price tag. And it's $1 million that's giving you tens of millions of dollars of work. But I just wanted to mention and ask if there's any way to hang on to the video of this, either with a time mark, but really, I know dozens of people who, if they're not watching now, because it's kind of hard to wait, would really like a video of this that they can use to explain to their school boards and their superintendent and so on how the right way to do this. So this could not have happened just because board members pushed it to happen. The board members it's a component of it, but what really happened is the special ed leadership, the curriculum, the superintendent blessed it. I don't know that he made it happen, but he watched over it and happen. All of that together, a systematic, step-by-step, thoughtful, long-term plan, fixing it when it didn't work, and putting in things to replace the things that aren't working. This is how change happens in education. So thanks. I'm really excited to hear this and watch good people having accomplished this.
Jerry, this is on the district's YouTube channel too, so if that's what you were asking for, somebody to watch this, it's on our YouTube channel. It'll be up shortly.
Jerry?
Oh,
We
okay.
have technicians that can extract this out
And
as
put
a
it separate. That's a great idea.
separate presentation. They can do it. They're laughing. They'll have it out for you.
There's cake
before you
over
leave.
there. I think we can bribe them or something.
And
Okay.
Jerry, I just want to also speak to when you brought up that, we have parents who can pay for that tutoring, right? Well, I do want you to know that we have had families now that have invested in us teaching their child, because the research does show that if you are in a tier 2 and you're receiving 2 types of Orton Gillingham programs, the brain can't get both at the same time. So that is a big question on the flow chart when we do process these decisions with the families. And then we lay out your options. And but you don't want your child to get both.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you to Katie and the team behind your, and I think to the point that was made by Jerry is the systematic nature of this work and the heart nature of this work, and when it's combined, it's so powerful. And so I think the work that Katie has seeded as our teachers see the success of kids, right? That's why we're all here, right? That's to the motivation, right? That's that success. And so as teachers are starting to see that and understand alongside this new research, right, that we as educators weren't always as well prepared as we wish we were around reading. And so it's been really neat recently to see a groundswell among teachers, which I credit a lot of that from this work that this team is doing, asking us for more training, more education, particularly around the specific curriculum or learning is called letters. You may have seen that floating around the state, and North Carolina just mandated it because they're seeing such profound difference in the outcomes for students. And so teachers met with me last Friday saying this is a game changer. This changed everything about how I teach and how the outcomes I see for students. And so it's something that as a district administration we're looking into for the future, but it's really a call from our folks who are on the ground and watching the success that's happening, saying, we want to know more.
Right.
And so we're really excited to see, we're working with different stakeholders now to see, might that be possible here in our district, to answer that call from our teachers to know more. So that's really exciting. And so thank you to your team for all of this.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. This was an incredible presentation. Thanks for coming and showing it to us.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
I wish you all a great night.